Welcome back to another episode of the Dynasty Dingers podcast. Today is Tuesday, May 20th. We have another special guest joining us this week. Doc's going to intro him in just a minute here. But before, Doc, what's going on, brother?
Oh, I'm just living the dream, man. I was in Atlanta for a bit, didn't get to go to a Braves game. I was just doing some business, taking care of it. We're starting earlier today than usual. I don't have my trusty
Yes,
little
we are.
sipper of bourbon. I don't have a bourbon. Don't have a cigar. I could get a cigar going, but I'm doing coffee right now. It says, "Be strong in the Lord and His mighty power." A little bit of a little bit of what do you call it? Proselytizing. We're gonna try to get everyone converted from this podcast. And I just talked about a couple things. I talked about the South. Talked about a little Christianity. And I think that might have something a little to do with our guest today. He does coach at a private Christian college, and he's got this son. You may have heard of Konnor Griffin, folks. We are honored to have his father, Kevin Griffin, on the show today. He is from Mississippi, and he's live on Dynasty Dingers. Sir, it is a pleasure to meet you. How are you today?
I'm doing great. Thanks to you guys for having me on, and looking forward to chatting it up a little bit.
Yeah, so are we. And Doc and I have had some nice guests through the first year and a half of doing this, but you're the first guest that we have that has real exposure to the amateur game from a coaching level, having of course your son, make it to where he is in the minor leagues and be drafted last year. So really looking forward to the conversation. I think the first thing we want to kick off with you today, Kevin, is kind of just the outlook of, Doc and I both have young families, not old enough yet to really know what talent looks like from our children. But, what did special look like for you? And did you know that Konnor right away was special when he started playing ball?
Well, obviously, not right when he started. He started at a young age, about 4 years old, getting the ball in his hand, probably younger than that, actually. But as far as playing organized baseball, probably around 5 or 6 as he developed. You hear the old adage that the better players at 12 years old are never the better players at 17 and 18, right? You hear that, and that just never ended up being the case with Konnor. Kids his age just didn't catch up with him. He actually developed along the way as he went. When he was 10 or 11 years old trying to pitch, you didn't know where it was going. The ball was spinning sideways out of his hand, and we really had to do some work to just get his release the right way. I never dreamed that he would ever pitch until about 12 years old. Something clicked, and then I was like, okay, maybe we've got something here. And then I wanted to wait to see how it developed when you move to the big field, because that's the game changer. And then everything continued to trend upwards for him. And eventually he became, I guess his baseball prowess was as an outfielder through travel ball years. And he pitched in high school, pitched a little bit in travel ball. But, I'd say about 12 years old, you could tell that he had something special.
And so you seem like you're kind of a big guy. You're just sitting down, but look, Konnor Griffin is but 6'4". What's he up to now? Almost 230.
Yeah, he's about 225.
Okay, and sir, does he get that from your side of the family?
Not me. I'm 6'2" and one of the tallest on my side of the family. Connor's grandmother was actually his great grandmother was about 6'2", and my wife Kim, her mom, is tall. That side of the family's got a lot of height in it. I think Kim's uncles were 6'4", 6'5", so I think he gets the height from that side of the family. And I like to say he got the athleticism from my side, right?
Okay, are you fast? You can run?
I was.
Okay.
I'm obviously 52 years old now, so that slowed down a lot. But as far as when I was in high school and in college, I was one of the faster guys on my teams. So Connor's a lot faster than I was even. I don't know how he continued to develop foot speed as he continued to grow, but that's one thing that we really focused on. And we wanted to make sure if he had a chance to be a professional athlete, we knew that foot speed couldn't go away, because the positions that he wanted to play, you got to be fast. And so he put a lot of effort into training for that, and just to make sure as he grew and his feet got bigger and he was 6'4", you just got to maintain your foot speed. And that's always been something that he's been able to maintain.
Now, you're currently the head softball coach. Doc, correct me. We were looking up the college last night. Remind me what Coach Griffin is head coach at.
Belhaven.
Belhaven. Season just unfortunately ended this past weekend. You know, being the head coach and having so much responsibility in that leadership role. How long have you been coaching, Mr. Griffin, and where do you see that going for you now that, you know, you have Konnor in the organization with the Pirates? Do you want to continue coaching? Do you feel like maybe a transition will come in the next 5 to 10 years? Where does your future lie?
Yeah, I'm not sure. That's a good question. I've been here at Belhaven. We're an NCAA Division III program. I've been here 15 years as the head coach, and we've been in the national tournament 13 of those 15 years.
Wow.
Finished last year as national runner-up. We got beat in the best 2 out of 3 final championship series of Division III softball this year. You mentioned last week we got knocked out of a regional, so kind of ended the season a little quicker than we would like. But it's been a great run. I love coaching female athletes. They seem to run through the wall for you if they know you care about them. They want to know you care about them more than what their stats are and how well they play. And I think if they know that, then they'll put forth the effort and do everything they can to perform on the field. But, you know, I don't know. With Konnor being in pro ball now, most of his stuff is in the summer, so that doesn't affect me much at all. My recruiting, we recruit a lot of junior college athletes, so my recruiting is done pretty much during my season. We have to find ways to watch players play at the junior college level. We have some high school kids sprinkled in and out that come in as freshmen, but most of our program are JUCO. So as long as he's playing in the summer, it's really not a conflict for me. If he had gone to LSU, that would be a different story. I don't know if I'd be sitting here right now in this office, but as long as he's successful in playing professionally, I see myself staying right here at Belhaven. I love this place and love what we've built here.
The transition from what I'm assuming your background was baseball, correct me if I'm wrong, into softball. How did you find the intangibles of each sport, right? Because they think they're different sports. When we think of softball and baseball, we like to classify them as the female version and the male version, but that, at least to me, is incorrect. How did you find that from a coaching perspective, and what got you into softball originally?
Well, it's kind of interesting. I coached high school basketball and college basketball for over 20 years and moved here in 2000 to Jackson, Mississippi to coach basketball here at Belhaven. And I did it for 2 or 3 years, got married, didn't want to be on the road recruiting all the time. So I went back to the high school level, coached high school basketball, and started coaching softball at that point. That was in, I think, 2003. And so we had some success at the high school level, one of the better high school programs in the state of Mississippi, in Clinton, Mississippi. And I just fell in love with the game. It was fast-paced, not a lot of standing around. I had coached a little baseball before in the past, but it was just a lot of standing around, long games. And I fell in love with the fast-pitch game because of that. And it kind of stuck. And Belhaven called me back in January of 2011 to take over the softball program, and here I am 15 years later.
Well, you know, I don't know if you got another 10 to 15 years in you, but I got this 3-year-old, and whew, she got a cannon on her, man. You're talking about, maybe you didn't know with Konnor Griffin, but
there you
man,
go.
I can tell she's a stud. She hurts me.
We'll recruit them young, man. We'll recruit them young.
Yeah. And while we're on it, actually, I do have this gear here. Maybe tell Konnor not to be too good too fast, because I want to see him in Indiana. This is a girl's Indians hat, and that's Paul Skeens right there, baby. We got put KG over there.
There you go.
Yeah, he was just being a stud. He was just like Paul Skeens would have this thing after every game. where he would just, and as many people as would stand in line, he would sign autographs or hang out, shake hands, whatever. It was like apparently unheard of at the stadium. But yeah, I mean, if he's going to be in AAA, by the end of next year, I might be able to make my way back to Indiana. I'm in Virginia right now, but I've been in Indiana the last few years. So yeah.
Connor's just like that. He loves signing autographs. He was that kid that got passed over for an autograph. There you go, Indianapolis Indians. Connor will never make a kid feel like he's been left out. He'll stand out there for an hour if he has to sign autographs, especially for the kids. So Paul Skeens is a good dude. He really well. Konnor met him in the recruiting process, going through it all at LSU. And then when he got down to spring training this past year, Paul really took time to go out of his way to make sure Konnor felt comfortable and that sort of thing. So it was very nice of him to kind of step out, maybe out of his comfort zone and do that for Konnor. And he didn't have to do that. So it was very, very kind gesture from Paul to do that.
Coach, have you talked to Konnor kind of through the process of maturity into now being in pro ball about the importance of intangibles and leadership within a pro organization, kind of like you just articulated there, building him into the expectation of this is what team leaders do and franchise leaders do? Is that something that was important to you, or did that come more natural to him as you kind of said from life experience?
Yeah, I think a little bit of both. I think leadership has always been something that he's been good at through the high school realm, just because everybody knew that he was going to be one of the better players on the field every time he stepped on the field. So he wanted to make sure that he reciprocated that by being a leader and being the right kind of leader. He's not an in-your-face type guy, but lead by example. And I feel like at his press conference when he signed with the Pirates in Pittsburgh over a year ago now, he made a statement that he wanted to be a part of the city. He didn't want to just be a baseball player on the field, but he wanted to be part of the community and wanted to be a leader in the community at some point whenever he got to Pittsburgh. And I can kind of see a little bit of that in him now, even in Bradenton. He's done a lot of appearances and people have gotten him to come and do autograph sessions and that sort of thing. And I think right now the best thing he can do is lead by example with his teammates. And if he shows up every day and they see an 18 or 19-year-old kid busting his tail, playing the game the right way, playing hard, then these 22, 23, 24-year-olds that he's playing with are going to take notice of that. And I think it'll make them step up and do the same thing, because sometimes as athletes, you can take this game for granted. Konnor just wants to keep it a kid's game right now and just play the game like it's a kid's game. And, he's even had coaches that have told him, hey, you need to tone it down a little bit, save your body. You don't have to sprint through first base every time on a ground ball to short. And that's just not who Konnor is. He's going to always play the game hard and play it the right way.
Yeah, you don't have to steal 90 bases in a high school season. Come on. It's a little bit risky. We're trying to get you drafted here. No.
Yeah. The humbleness of Konnor is something that he's always been. He makes sure that people notice that he's a humble guy. He's always going to be kind and take time for others. People always remember how you made them feel, right? And they won't always remember your stats and how you played, but they'll always remember how you made them feel. And that's what he wants his teammates to remember him as.
Well, and failure and success at the pro level, right? The whole game is built on failure. Right. And when you look at that community aspect that you spoke on that Konnor wants, if you are in the community and you're showing that kind of foot forward, they'll love you no matter what. And I think that kind of just bleeds into having more of a successful career, because, as you talked about with your own coaching experience and having a team that knows you have their back. If a player has a city's back, the city will in turn reciprocate, I think, normally. Unless you're in a massive market that has a very short attention span. Mm-hmm. I wanted to kind of swing back and hit on something Doc said. It was referencing Konnor's high school numbers, especially his senior year. A lot of us in the prospect circle know how incredibly talented Konnor is and the numbers he put up last year. But I wanted to ask you, how does the current high school game regionally stack up with travel ball? again, Connor's stolen bases and home runs and average his senior year. What's the difference that you saw that the 4 years that Konnor was in high school in the difference of play level?
The state of Mississippi gets a bad rap for baseball that it's a lower level, and that's just not true. The better teams in the state of Mississippi could go compete against the best teams in California and Florida and in any other state. There's a lot of talent that's come through this state. You can just, even with the Pirates, like Corey Dickerson, who played with the Pirates for years. He was with the Rockies, Hunter Renfroe, guys like you've got
Justin Steele, Colt Keith.
Justin Steele, Colt Keith, who's made a name for himself. The list goes on and on and on and on. And so per capita, Mississippi produces just as many big leaguers as anybody. So, but as far as like the travel ball scene, I think a lot of people dive into travel ball thinking that they've got to have it to go get recruited and get noticed and that sort of thing. And with Konnor, we never really did the exposure circuit at all. We played some tournaments and we went out of state and we played in normal tournaments. But as far as the exposure scene, we just didn't dive into that. We never went to Jupiter, never went to area code games. He played in the East Coast Pro, but we just did normal tournaments until the Junior National Showcase and the National Showcase. That's the only two things that Konnor ever did. So I think it's a misnomer. People think you got to chase that stuff, and you really don't. If you're good enough, people are going to find you. And certainly those things are needed for some people, I'm sure. But in a position like Konnor, where all eyes are on you a lot from the time you're 14 or 15 until now, the exposures just aren't something you have to chase every weekend.
And would you say that, I mean, my thinking would be all the horror stories we're starting to hear about burnout with travel ball. Do you think that maybe you saved him from some of that and gave him and helped preserve that passion and energy?
Yeah, I'd like to think so. And I think it probably started even at a younger age. You got to make sure a kid loves the game or they're not going to want to continue to play it. And that's why we did so much with other sports. And I'm sure we'll dive into that here in a little bit. But yeah, you're right. Burnout is huge. You don't want a kid to burn out and get tired of playing the sport, especially if you see that they're talented. And then all of a sudden they don't want to be in that sport anymore. So that's unfortunate. But we put a big emphasis on making sure that didn't happen. And we didn't talk a whole lot about success or failure. It's just, did you have fun today? And that's kind of how we approached it from the time he was 5 or 6 years old all the way up until he was a senior in high school.
Yeah, that's something that we, like, from a philosophy perspective, we're really curious. And I'll kind of just jump to it. One of the questions we had for you today was, as a father, when you're raising your kids and you highlight that you have something very special, do you encourage multiple sports? I know Konnor played football. Correct me if I'm wrong, but you being a basketball coach, what did you have him in, and how long did you have him in those sports, even after knowing, hey, like, he's really good at baseball?
At a young age, he played soccer just because I thought it was really good from a motor skill standpoint of, you're running, it's good conditioning. You got to have, it's not really hand-eye coordination, it's foot-eye coordination. You got to be able to kick the ball and while you're moving. I think there's a lot of good in that. He played soccer till he was 8 years old, and at 8, it was 5-on-5. And I think the last soccer game he ever played, he scored 11 goals, and he said, I'm bored with this, and never played it again. And I was okay with that because I didn't want to watch soccer every weekend. But it was important at the time for him to do that. And then as he got older, he played basketball in high school. He was one of the best players on his team. They won state championships while he was in high school. And he played above the rim. So that was fun watching him play. He played football through his 9th grade year, and then he gave it up after his 9th grade year just because a lot of people were coming at him from a professional baseball standpoint, and we saw that this might trend in the right direction. So the inherent risk of football was something that me as a dad, not necessarily as a coach, I had I had to share those risks with him. Whether I thought he should play or not play wasn't important, but it was important for me to let him know the risk. Hey, if you continue to do this and you had a career-ending injury or an injury even that sets you back a year, it could slow your process down as far as you meeting your goals of being a professional baseball player one day. So he decided to give up football after ninth grade and just focus on baseball the remainder of the time. He did play basketball through his junior year in high school, so he did do that. And then his senior year, he focused specifically on baseball. But at a young age, I think kids should play as many sports as they can possibly play.
But you were talking earlier about how impressive it is that Konnor's kept his foot speed as a bigger gentleman now. He's getting, he could grow into even more strength and more weight. So it'll be interesting. But those roots in soccer kind of makes me wonder if this playing that till he was 8, those are formative years. Maybe that was beneficial. Maybe he wouldn't have been so fleet of foot or as coordinated with his feet.
Right. I think you're right. And there's a lot of good that every sport helps the other. Basketball was huge for him. It helped his explosiveness. I mean, you got to explode off the floor. You got to start and stop. I think it helps joints and tendons and everything, especially with your knees. Your arms are moving a lot as well. If you shoot a basketball, they got to go up and down. So I think a lot of good comes from all sports helping one another.
Coach, do you think that also kind of plays into maybe what Doc was asking earlier and what you discussed with the burnout, but even beyond the burnout, some of the amateur injuries we're seeing, right? We're seeing high school pitchers at a greater degree, and maybe it's just from the ability to have news instantly, but tear the UCL, have shoulder issues. Do you think it's because their parents and then themselves are leveraging so much of a workload with baseball, or do you think possibly it's because of the lack of multiple sports, or is it maybe both?
Yeah, it's probably a little of both. There's too much specialization going on at younger ages. I understand it at the high school level if a kid's special and they see they have a future, but at younger ages, before junior high, ninth grade, kids should play as many sports as their time will allow them to play. And I know that's a lot. Sometimes you have single parents who are spread thin and you can't get a kid from one sport to another. And you see that a good bit as well. But I just think that the more you can do until you see that you need to specialize, that should be at an older age, like 16, 17, 18 years old, not at 8, 9, and 10, 11, and 12 years old.
Yeah, no, I think that's great advice and something Doc and I will definitely remember. I want to circle back and kind of get your philosophy from a coaching perspective and from a father, looking at what you've seen with your players, your son. What do you really think is the biggest key to unlocking development in a young player? I kind of listed some things out. Is it training, confidence, discipline, desire?
Mm-hmm.
What is your philosophy with really getting the most out of an amateur?
We've touched on a little bit already, just keeping the love of it. You got to have the desire to play the game. And with that desire, you have to have a love for it. And I don't think you could have one without the other. There's so much emphasis now on different training methods. And I think data and analytics have hurt the game of baseball from a training and physical standpoint. People are chasing numbers all the time. I don't think it's a good thing. We didn't have weighted balls and all that stuff when we were coming up playing the game, and pitchers were just fine then. I hear the argument all the time that the pitching's better now than it was, 20 years ago. It's hard for me to believe that Nolan Ryan, Dwight Gooden, Sandy Koufax, guys like that wouldn't have been successful in today's game. I think they would be ultra successful just like they were. Nobody knew their numbers back then as far as the data and analytics, and they didn't chase those things because they didn't have it. So I think that's why you see a lot of injuries today that you didn't really see or hear of back then, and people are chasing velocity and that sort of thing. So I think baseball was more of a pure game 25 years ago than it is now. And now it's just all driven by numbers. And I don't necessarily like that too much, honestly.
Yeah, man. Oh gosh, we're making a chunk of our listeners real mad. But if they're guys like me, if they've listened to me so far, I'm old school, man. Listen, I think that numbers are cool, and if they can help a team improve, if they can help a player improve, that's great. But they can't be the end all be all, because it's not the statistics that dictate the player; it's the player that dictates the statistics. And there's certain intangibles, and like when it comes to pitchers, like Justin Steele, master of pitchability. People were counting him out for a while because he's a 2-pitch guy. Well, no, he can manipulate those pitches and like alter, yeah. And so and frankly, even when his fastball is at its best, like what's he getting to, 92 maybe? But he just knows where to put it and how to sequence it. And so, and in other words, he knows how to be a pitcher.
Yeah, and 25 years ago, velocity was measured at the plate with radar guns, and now it's all measured out of the hand. And guys may be throwing harder these days just because of the training and different types of training methods and stuff that are out there, but they may be, it might be detrimental too. I mean, you're seeing a whole lot more injuries today than you ever saw. A couple of things that I was going to mention as far as training and chasing numbers and stuff. I think social media has had a big part in it as well. Kids want to get those numbers and blast them out all over social media and post them. Therefore, they're training harder to be able to post those numbers. So I think social media in this day and age has played a big negative in development, which might sound crazy, but I think it's only because it's the race to be blessed is the way I call it. Like you in high school, I'm blessed to receive an offer. I'm blessed in this. I'm blessed in that. And I always call it the race to be blessed on social media. And I don't think it's a good thing.
Do some of the girls on your team go to, I'd say, I'm going to call it third party analytic training services or facilities in their off season? If they do, how do you deal with that as a coach and being someone that is more of a purist in the game? And also then secondly, has that analytical approach worked its way into collegiate softball?
Yeah, we don't have a lot that do that. I mean, they may go back to their pitching coach that they've been with for years and years. But as far as hitters, I don't run into it a whole lot. The main reason is we start in August in fall ball, and we go August to November, and then they're off December and half of January, and then we're playing from January all the way until most years June. So I encourage them to take the rest of June, all of July, most of August off, and not even pick up a bat or a ball in that situation. And that's kind of how we handle things with Konnor when he was in high school as well. He never picked up a ball in the months of October, November, December, other than the long toss. But we put the ball down. And every time we did that, when we came back in February and he threw his first bullpen, you always saw a 4 or 5 mile an hour jump from the time he was in 9th grade, time he was in 12th grade. That's why we saw him go from like 74 to 97 with velo. And I think a lot of it is we put the ball down, and he got plenty of rest. He didn't throw a curveball until he was 14 years old. It was fastball, changeup. And we just believed in that, and we stuck to it. And that might not work for everybody, but it worked for us. And I've used that with all 3 of my boys, and that's just the plan that we had. So we stuck with it. It worked for us. Not saying it's right for everybody, but that's what that's the way we handled it.
And it's especially impressive in a warm weather climate down in Mississippi too, because obviously there's more opportunities there to play year round than some places. And you know what? It's like you see, it's. I know I still look like like I'm in high school, but as a young man, I can still remember the ego and the pride and what you're talking about that belies the need to hit that next number and get everyone to know that you're hitting those numbers. It's just like you want to climb that ladder, you got to be the best. And like, hey, it comes from like, when it comes to professional sports, like, yeah, you want some of that competitive desire for sure. But then if you want to talk about data, there's actually charts that go out every, usually in the off season or early in MLB season, showing you the top velo guys. Yeah, they're usually some of the most effective pitchers when they're healthy, and then one by one you start seeing them like more and more they drop off, and like it's kind of the inevitable Tommy John. So you have to weigh it out, right? And I guess that would be a follow-up question to you would be because so for me, I see like I'd rather have a guy go 180 200 innings. Maybe he's not going to throw as many strikeouts, but isn't it an issue for prospects, for these young kids trying to get drafted, period? Because that's what I hear as a counter argument of like, hey, you can tell these kids not to throw harder, but what if they don't get the offers that way?
Yeah, I mean, that's the other side to it for sure. And I guess the biggest thing I can say is, as a parent and as a college coach, I feel like I'm a professional in this business alongside being a parent, is you just have to trust what you believe in. And if that means, if you trust and believe in throwing, every day of your life and chasing high velo, then if that's what you believe in, you gotta trust what you believe in. You find out the hard way sometimes, but I've just always had that approach. We believed in doing it a certain way, and we didn't chase it, and we trusted it, and it kind of worked out. The other thing I'll say is you get to the high school level, and if you're an athlete that's getting highly recruited or whatever, you read all kinds of stuff about yourself, like sports writers and people with all these publications. They write, and they don't know anything about you. Like when Konnor got drafted, he had a hit tool problem. Everybody said, everybody talked about the hit tool problem and struggles in that summer leading up to the draft the year before. What people didn't know is that the last AB of the regular season in high school that year, he subluxed his shoulder hitting a home run. So he went 6 weeks that next summer not even picking up a bat, and the first swing he took was in the USA national event, or PDP. And that was the first swing he took. He never took a BP swing or anything. He went into a game and he looked like crap because he was scared of what his shoulder might do again. Well, he did that for 3 or 4 weeks. We couldn't say anything about it. Obviously, we had to kind of keep all that quiet, but everybody thought just because he was swinging and missing that he had a hit tool problem, and he was just battling through an injury that he kept quiet. So that's another thing. You can't always put stock into what people write. You start reading all this stuff, and you can go on a downward spiral if you start believing what everybody says about you. So just trust in what you're doing, trust the process, believe in it, and tune out the outside noise, and don't worry about what everybody else thinks.
Well, sorry, just to confirm, that was his senior year that the shoulder
That was after his junior year of high school.
After junior.
So the summer, fall, going into or after his junior year of high school, that's when everything happens for you as far as the draft. So we had PDP that year, we had East Coast Pro, USA Trials, and then ended up, if you make USA Trials, he ended up going to Taiwan. So his biggest goal was not to be playing good at PDP, don't be playing good at East Coast Pro. He wanted to represent his country and put those 3 letters on his chest. And he wanted to play for Team USA. So he did everything in his power to ease back into it to be ready for USA Trials. When he went to California, he kind of set it on fire. And that's because he saved his shoulder and gained his confidence back to where he could just cut it loose. And then he made that team, went to Taiwan, and then the rest of the time before the draft, it kind of just took off for him. So, a lot of things people don't know, and they still talk about hit tool problems to this day because of something that happened a year and a half ago that they didn't even know about.
It's fascinating. And Doc and I see this a lot. I would say in the industry of prospecting, we are more balanced of data and old school scouting. But I think the biggest thing him and I have talked about through the year and a half of doing the show is just we kind of call it like the catch on fire trend, which is if one reporter comes out with one concept, other people look for the same thing.
Yeah.
And I've always thought, trying to put myself in the shoes of an amateur high school athlete, how challenging it must be to not look at your social media, not look at Baseball America, right? Not read what's actually being said about you.
Mhm.
I think that was a really interesting piece you added in. And I think Konnor was lucky to have you as a father and as a collegiate coach, right? I mean, not a lot of amateurs have that where when dad says something, dad knows, as opposed to, dad saying something. And that can be a huge difference. I was really curious, Konnor being such a large physical athlete, how did you manage the mechanical adjustments he was needing to make as he grew in height and he grew in strength? Or was that something that you set a foundation and you just allowed him to be who he was?
Well, until like high school, you just allow them to be who they are. The biggest thing, you got to see the ball and hit the ball. And
Mhm.
if you can't do that, it don't matter what your setup is, what your stance is. You got to have good hand-eye coordination. We did some vision training with like small balls and like golf ball size wiffle balls, max BP machines, that sort of thing. I'm not a big gimmick guy. We've never been a gimmick guy, but one of the biggest tools that we've used that's, I guess, helped Konnor the most is the core velocity belt. It has nothing to do with your swing. It has everything to do with activating your hips and feeling that you're using your lower half the right way, your core. So that's really the only gimmick or tool, so to speak, that we ever use with development. But it's just let a kid be who they are. And then the biggest thing is you're getting into college and pro ball, you got to be able to hit high velo. And there's only really one way to train that on a daily basis, and that's crank up the machine and let it rip. And he trained, I think his daily velo training was 105 miles an hour, and he trained leading up to pro ball this past year. That's all he did every day was train high velo about 105 miles an hour. And if you can hit that, you're going to be okay with 95 to 98, which is what he's seeing a lot of right now.
Did you prefer to, when he was in training sessions, did you prefer to have him using metal, or did you prefer to have him using wood as he got towards the end of high school in preparation for, his pro jump?
He used wood just in training, but he balanced mixing in metal as well because it's a different feel. He didn't want to train with wood and then jump into a high school state championship series and put metal back in his hand, because it is a different feel. And honestly, he got to where he loved swinging wood and felt more comfortable with that than he did swinging metal. When you're taking BP, he's hitting more home runs with wood than he was with the BB core bats. So I think that's also something that's difficult for a lot of kids, is to make that adjustment to wood. And he made it pretty easily. And I'm not sure why. He just liked the way that it felt. And when you can go down to Marucci and Baton Rouge and they can customize the wood to feel the way you want it to feel in your hand, that plays a big part in it too. So we appreciate those guys down there at Marucci for putting that information and that kind of training at his disposal.
So I knew I said something like this. I've talked about I think that's how we got connected on Twitter X there. I've been hyping up your son for a while now. I think there were so many great collegiate stars that they're on the TV, they're getting a little bit more of a fame, you might say, more buzz around them. And this year's draft, or that year's draft class, it seemed like just the prep kids were getting looked over. I'm like, well, even if you're going to look over the prep kids, who's the number one? Like, he's probably still really good. If you look at the track record of baseball superstars, a lot of them they're prep kids. And so what I have here written down, I said that the most upside out of any prospect in baseball, if everything clicks, is Konnor Griffin, because he's got the speed and raw power you cannot teach. And I wrote this here, and it's not clear his hit tool is actually as bad as people say it is. Like, it's again, what you were saying, it was just kind of like this buzzy thing that people figured would be the case, I think, because everything else was so well-rounded. So, I said, if the fog clears and he actually has a good hit tool, which frankly, sir, he could have an average hit tool, like he's going to be a star. So it's just very funny. Yeah, like you said, though, one guy says one thing, and we'll see what happens. I think right now we're seeing him play in the pros, which is he's lighting it up. It's almost like his hit tool's too good. And so maybe you would, I'm not sure if you've been able to, I'm sure you have been able to. I'm not sure if you've been able to see every game, but probably most games. It looks like he's not taking any walks.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's because it's like he's too, frankly, it seems like he's too advanced for the level. So if you're going to pitch him in the zone, he's going to make you pay. Is that kind of what you're seeing so far? And obviously he's got a long road of development.
Yeah, I kind of want to fist bump you through the screen there for bringing that up, because we hear that and read it every day. Just the walk to strikeout ratio is way too high for Konnor to be successful at the pro level, which I think is complete crap. Because would you want somebody, any player, not just him, but he's hitting 324 right now. And yeah, that could continue to rise. It could go on a spiral downward for a few weeks. Who knows? That's pro baseball, right? So, but he's hitting 324, one of the top 2 or 3 in the league in most offensive categories. But people are going to complain that he's not walking enough and he's striking out too much. But his strikeout rate, he would like that to be a little bit lower. But most of it came in the first 2 or 3 weeks of pro ball, seeing spin that he's never seen before at the high school level. So now that he's adjusting to it and seeing the ball up and not chasing as much down, he's in the last 2 to 3 weeks, he's really cut down on those strikeout numbers. So I don't put a lot of stock in that walk strikeout deal that we're reading a lot, because he is taking advantage of pitches in the zone. His contact rate on pitches that they consider chase is crazy right now. Like, he's making a hard contact on pitches that people consider chase pitches. And that's why I don't even like reading all that data and analytics, because I just look at OPS, I look at batting average. Are you scoring runs? Are you driving in runs? Are you being productive? And right now I feel like he's being productive.
Well, it is interesting because the outliers are the superstars. And usually the outlying data leaves us as analysts thinking, well, we're not sure. You look at Aaron Judge's actual, underlying sabermetric data. Mm-hmm. You would think the guy probably isn't a very successful major leaguer. Well, he hits it really hard, right? You look at Ellie, who has some issues with swing and miss and chase as well, has, the freak athleticism that Konnor has. And it goes down the line, even with Jack Caglione from Florida, now with the Royals. You look at those guys and it's like, oh, they're just incredible baseball players. But they break the model of the data a lot of the time. And I think that plays right into what you were saying, where, why focus on that when this player is doing so well at their level? Let's see how they do at the next level. I know you kind of spoke on earlier, having a couple other boys. I wanted to look it up real quick. Where is the rest of the family at? Are they athletes? Are you still really involved with getting them to where they want to be? And how has Konnor been a role model for the rest of his siblings?
So Connor's my middle son. I've got an older one that's 21. He could have played baseball out of high school at different college levels. He decided, he didn't love it like Konnor did. He enjoyed it, but he didn't want to he liked hunting and fishing and doing other things. He decided he decided he wanted to go to school, or not go to school. He wanted to go straight to work and start making money. So he's a foreman at a foundation repair company. They do encapsulations under houses. He's very, very successful, and he's one of the supervisors in that company now at 21 years old. My youngest is a 9th grader, just finished his last day of school today. So he will be a 10th grader next year. He plays basketball, football, and baseball. Just a good athlete, kind of like Konnor was when Konnor was that age. Caden plays everything and super athletic. Only time will tell what he'll end up being as a player in whatever sport. But right now he just loves them all. And whatever season of the year it is, he's going to play that sport.
As a father, how do you not allow maybe what we would consider, I want to phrase it properly, let's call it stardom, to affect the attention and relationships with your other boys? Is that something that, you know, you found?
Yeah, I'm gonna piggyback and go back to your last question. I didn't quite answer it for you. Konnor attributes his success to all the times that him and his brothers were able to get in the yard and play blitz ball. And I think blitz ball was probably the single best thing for Connor's development and hand-eye coordination, because that thing's moving all over the place. But during COVID years, that's all they did. They played outside every day. So they had a good relationship. I think, you know, the expectations of, back to your other question, the expectations of Cannon and my youngest Caden, they had expectations on them because of who Konnor was. They would hear it even at games. And I think that kind of caused the love of the game for my oldest to probably diminish, because every time he was at bat in a high school game, if he didn't get a double or hit the ball out of the park, even if he got on base, the student sections of all those other schools were chanting Connor's name and yelling that Konnor would have done better and that kind of thing. And I think it kind of diminished the love of the game for Cannon. And it was hard for him to kind of let that go and not let it go in one ear and out the other. It kind of stuck with him. Hadn't seen it as much with my youngest yet, but I think it's going to come. And we've already talked to him about being himself. And you don't have to be Konnor. You don't have to be anybody but who you are. And you're your own person. And I think Caden will be able to handle that. And we probably didn't have those conversations quite soon enough with my oldest. But I learned through that. And we're going to make sure that that doesn't affect Caden while he's making his journey through high school.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. That's again, kind of from a young father's perspective, something that I was curious, because, you know, not at that stage yet. I hope to be one day, you know, and even if it's just minor success, you want to learn from others and how to have those conversations.
Absolutely.
Doc, you had some fun questions for Coach. Did you want to take it over?
Yeah, we've got a few minutes left here, so we'll merge two of these into one. It's there were a few people, you know, so we're big on the Twitter X, you know, we're big into fantasy baseball, fantasy side of things. And when you're in fantasy now, dude, we play in like up to 30 team leagues. So like you're basically simulating real baseball. You have a farm system. I'm not sure if you're fully aware of this, sir, but that's where.
Yeah.
Are you aware of this?
I honestly didn't know that fantasy baseball existed anything below the major league level. And I started reading all this stuff about, I don't even know
FYPD.
what it's called. You can explain it to me, but it's pretty intriguing.
Yeah, man. So basically, imagine it's like MLB simulator, more or less. You get 30 of us. We all think we're GMs. Sometimes it's for money. Sometimes we got mental problems. We just love baseball so much. We can't get enough. And so, yeah, it's interesting, man. Like Konnor, yeah, he was starting off kind of without hype. I mean, and he started really picking up steam as we were going toward the season. I managed to trade up to the 9th pick in one draft, and I picked him. I was very happy. Thought that was a steal. So I got him for life in one of my deepest leagues. Is fun. But when we were looking for these kids, it's almost like we're functioning as a GM theoretically. So you'll get some guys out there who will kind of morph into, like, frankly, bordering into scout mode, right? And they'll actually go there, get the live looks, and get the footage. And so there was big footage going around from his hitting, Konnor's hitting switch from July to December. It seemed like there was his swing looked a little different. It seemed like he was putting on some muscle. I mean, I guess, can you confirm that, or was that just like some weird couple of videos? And the second follow-up would be, how much of that was you versus the Pirates? You know, were you giving them any tips?
Yeah, it was leading up to going to spring training. It was all the work that he and I put in. And another guy locally named Josh DeMoney, who's a friend of ours that has a facility that Konnor can go hit at called Grit. But yeah, we made some tweaks. We wanted to minimize his hand movement, keep a good load, but maybe start hands back a little bit, be more relaxed, but minimize how much your hands moved in your load. And we felt like that would help him be quicker to the ball, stay more inside the inside pitch, keep his hands inside, and be able to catch the fastball out front. And so we made that one little tweak, knowing that he had to adjust to higher velo, and it just seemed to click with him. He got to spring training, was going really good. Spring training, the Pirates wanted him to try something else. That it didn't really work for him. So their hitting coach at the low A level is really, really good. Quentin Brown, they call him Q. Konnor loves him. He talks more about the mental side of the game than just making adjustments physically. The Pirates get a bad rap for like hitting development and that sort of thing. Maybe rightfully so over the years, but right now I feel like they've got really good guys in place that can help develop hitters. Konnor's in a great place. He loves it. He feels like he's getting better. And I think it started with the tweaks that we made, and then now the Pirates just letting him be himself and not trying to really change what's going good for him.
How many teams did you meet with before the draft? I'm not sure how the process actually works. If it's like Moneyball, I'm a fantasy nerd. So yeah, how was that process for you? And were there other teams that seem to be talking very highly about Konnor?
Yeah, I think we had about 20 of the organizations do in-home visits. As far as private workouts, 4 or 5 different teams. We tried to minimize how many private workouts we did because we had gotten, a pretty good understanding of where Konnor might go in the draft. So if somebody's picking 28th or 30th, we were kind of spinning our wheels by traveling and doing all that. We asked people to come to us. We never went to a major league stadium. We did all the running around through travel ball and all that over the years. We spent the money. So we took the approach we were going to have them come to us. And so we would say, August the 17th, we're having a workout at Jackson Prep, and everybody that wants to come is invited to come. And people would show up in droves for those workouts. So that's really how we met with the teams, is they came into those private workouts that we set up, and they came and kind of did it on our time. And I think a lot of people that are going to be going through this process in the draft this year could learn a little bit from that, because you don't have to go to them. They'll come to you. If they want you bad enough, they'll come to you.
Coach, I had one last question for you before Doc finishes it out. You talked about the mechanical adjustments that you encouraged Konnor and worked with Konnor on this offseason. I've always been curious, when you make an adjustment like that after making the pro jump, how challenging is it for the player to cement those changes and not revert back to former mechanics?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is, especially as an 18 and 19-year-old, you always want to be respectful of what people are trying to get you to do. So it's hard for somebody that age to say no. But what we instilled in him and Konnor's advisor / agent, Joey Devine, Casey Close, they always told Konnor, it's your career. You have to do what you feel is best, because it's your career and you're the one trying to advance through the system. So Konnor's learned to be respectful of people's ideas, knowing that they're just trying to help if they suggest something. But he also has learned to let things go in one ear and out the other if he feels like it's not something that's comfortable for him. And it took a little bit of time for him to be able to not say yes to everything and be willing to say no and just do what he feels is best for his career. But that's kind of the point that he's at right now. But you always have all kinds of ideas and stuff coming from all different directions, whether you're in pro ball or whether you're in a showcase tournament or whatever. People are always wanting to put their thumb and put their stamp on you. But he's done a good job of being able to say no.
All right, you got a couple minutes left, sir.
Yeah.
I'll leave it up to you. I'm just going to kind of keep it broad. If you have anything, maybe a funny story about Konnor that just like off the top of your head that maybe people wouldn't, but just something about his character, or if faith's important to his game, or just anything you'd like to leave us.
Yeah, faith is big. I mean, we're a big faith family and put a lot of emphasis on that. We just know that God's given Konnor a talent to play this game, and he just wants to honor him in everything that he does. And whether it's his play on the field, his workouts, how he interacts with people or fans. He just tries to be God honoring in every way that he can. A story, not really a funny story at the time, but it kind of is now looking back. When he was 9 years old, he was in a go-kart accident, and he was riding a go-kart with no helmet. His brother was on a motorcycle behind him chasing him, and he was looking back to see where his brother was. And when he turned around, his face planted one of those steel guide wires that come off a telephone pole, and it mangled his face. He had over 120 stitches in his face, and he was only like a millimeter away from losing his eye. That was a God thing that he didn't lose it, and he wouldn't be in the situation that he's in right now playing this game. But we were in Mississippi. He was at my parents in Georgia when that happened. We drove all night. He had reconstructive surgery before we even got there. And when we finally got to him, my wife, with tears in her eyes, she looks down at him, and he opens one of the eye that he can open. And the first thing he looks up and says, "Am I going to be able to play in my baseball World Series next week?" So from a young age, that's all Konnor's thought about was baseball, and he eats, sleeps, and breathes it. And I think to be able to get to the point that he's at, that's kind of the way it has to happen. There's a lot of things you have to sacrifice: school trips, class parties, vacations. Everybody else is doing fun stuff while you're grinding and putting in the work. And so while that's not a funny story, it's funny the reaction that he had to the first time that Kim laid eyes on him after the accident. So very fortunate that he's even here, able to play the game. And, so he's blessed for sure.
Yeah, no, that's an incredible story. We really appreciate you passing that on to us. Because as a father, right, I can only imagine. But have your son shine so brightly through such a disastrous accident and show his real personality is beautiful. And to your point, God bless in a lot of ways. Coach, I wanted to thank you for coming on today. This was an incredible experience. Everything you shared with us, from your son's journey to also your journey, and the bits of knowledge from parenting you were able to pass on to us. I wanted to thank you.
Yeah, thank you guys, and I appreciate all y'all do.
Yeah, thank you so much.
God bless, man. Thank you for coming by. And I think Konnor's fantasy stock is way up, knowing that he's got you whispering in his ear. And that story was a good mix of God and humor. And
Yeah.
I have a way that I exit this show. It's a little tribute to Doc Holliday, because that's where I got my name from, and it's when I say, "I'm your Huckleberry."
Again, Coach, thank you so much. We'll see you guys next week.